Hey guys, my name is Alex, otherwise known as the Notebook Dragon, and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be embarking on a wondrous journey that can only be called the world's most extra swatch palette for Ohuhu markers. Onto the sketchbook. Ohuhu is a eclectic art brand of sort, a place where you can find a variety of different artistic tools and things to use in your day-to-day trade. Things like, alcohol markers, water-based markers, sketch pads, water pads, they've even got marker organizers these days. If you like to do art, specifically, if you like to do traditional mediums of art, such as, say, drawing, if you like to do art, then I would definitely recommend Ohuhu be a brand you look at, for the very simple reason is they tend to offer what the expensive brands offer for an absolute fuckload cheaper. To give reference, today we're actually going through and swatching out the 320 Honolulu B marker set, which cost me about 280 Aussie dollars altogether. For comparison, just to really drive home the price difference, a 72 set of Copic sketch markers would cost me about $750. That's a bit of a price difference. I'm not going to do math right now, but the number on the screen shows exactly how cheaper it is. Yeah, so I went with the Ohuhu markers. So I've actually had these markers for a while, and I've been meaning to really, sit down and swatch them out properly. Now, Ohuhu actually does come with a series of swatch cards that you can fill out yourself, which, as you can see, I already have. But considering I'm planning to use this obnoxiously fancy notebook I got from the Quirky Cup Collected as a sketchbook, specifically, I want to use this one as an alcohol marker art sketchbook, and we'll see why I'm being specific about it very soon. But yeah, no, I wanted to start it off with a swatch palette, and I wanted to start it off with a swatch palette for two reasons. Reason number one is that it's always good to have a swatch palette on the paper you intend to use, because then that way you know exactly how the markers react to that paper. And reason number two, the first page in any new sketchbook is the most terrifying thing known to man. So I decided a swatch palette would probably be a safe place to go, because then that way I'd be able to quell my anxiety of the first page while still actually getting something moderately aesthetic onto it. And that is what brought me here. Now, I did them in order of the official swatch, which means that, as you can see on the swatch sheets, they aren't all actually in hue order. I think they're in order of just, I don't know, maybe chemicals and formulas behind the scenes. You'll notice in some cases, even on this page, there are a couple of colors in here that anyone of the discerning artistic eye can look at and go, that's not fucking yellow, that's orange. It even says it's orange. What the fuck's it doing in the yellow section? I don't know, ask Ohuhu. I was following their guidelines. If it had a Y in front of it, it was fucking yellow. Yeah, so this here is the first page. So I started off with some beautifully scuffed lettering for my title, Ohuhu marker. Now, this isn't the first ever swatch palette I have ever done for Ohuhu. The last one I did was on one of those $5 Jesuit style visual diaries that we all had in high school, and as you can see, my old one was a lot simpler. But I figured this time around, let's go dramatic, let's go swooshy. And so I did the lettering you see before you. It's not perfect. I still need to work on my brush lettering. I am going to be getting into doing some bullet journaling videos, because I want to start doing that. So you will see me doing some practice. But at this point, that is my titling skill no jutsu. The reason I decided to go with a sunflower theme for yellow is because sunflowers are yellow. I'm going to tell you guys a massive secret about artists. You will find that for most of us, it really isn't deeper than that. The reason I'm doing the pieces on the sides as well is they are also essentially acting as an extremely aesthetic and over-the-top blending test. It's allowing me to test the colors to see how they blend together and to try and get something nice. And I will admit, on the paper in the Quirky Cup Collective journals, it is really nice for markers. Like, the blending was buttery smooth. I'm saying, like, on some of these future pages, you will see that I have beaten the blending within an inch of its life, and the paper has not frayed, torn, or scuffed in the slightest. Bled, definitely. They're alcohol markers. But, oh my god, the blending was so satisfying. If you want to spend an obnoxious amount of money on a fancy journal for drawing pictures in, the Quirky Cup Collective is actually pretty good. The paper's actually really good. And this is from an unbiased bird's perspective. Oh, yes, you'll also probably notice as well, I've got an obnoxiously fancy pocket on the front page. I was absolutely stealing an idea from the incredibly talented creator Jashi Corinne in making a pocket with that first front page, because it's always partially glued down. So if I ever have any more like cuttings or trimmings that I don't end up using in this book because I decide to get creative again, I'm probably just going to stick them in that pocket for later. And as you can see, even though I did cut out part of the pocket, on this next page here, I did use that cutout to extend the orange section. Welcome to page 2. Now, I did not have enough space for all of the yellows on page 1, so I extended it a bit more to this section up here. I'll be honest, I didn't entirely know what I was doing with it as I was drawing that. The hanging florals, it's kind of like a hanging wheat barley kind of look. I will admit, I was just thinking, oh, hanging leaves. Look nice. Me like when look nice. And that was the end of my thought process, and that's probably why out of all of the side panels, it's probably the most eclectic one. But I'm still happy with it. It's kind of, it's calm. It's like a nice, calm, chill, floppy leaf pattern. And yeah, like, now that I see it, it does actually look like wheat, and bread is good. And of any of these panels as well that I have to continue on the next page, I've got at the end of them just to kind of go like, yellow, continued, yada. After that, we've got the orange section. Now, you've probably noticed that the orange section has actually been expanded. Now, I did get a bit of a footage of me doing up this extra expanded section here, and quite simply, the reason the orange section got expanded is I have a lot of Ohuhus, and I didn't quite realize until I was swatching up all of my brush and chisel ones, which is the Honolulu A set, I believe. I've actually got the larger skin color marker set, because it's always good to have as many skin color tones as possible, and I didn't quite realize that a good chunk of the colors in said set would not actually be part of the 320 colors. Ohuhu technically has more than 320 colors out, and you just don't quite realize it until you're swatching them all together. So orange originally ended with fluoro here, and then I got to the skin color set, and all of a sudden it's like, ah, shit. But luckily, past me at that point had decided to be smart and make a pocket, and so I had a spare piece of fancy paper laying around, and I went, perfect, I am going to turn this into the orange extended section. You'll notice as well that there are 3 categories on each page. There are F, B, and C. That stands for fine, brush, and chisel. If fine and brush are colored, then it means that I've got it in the main marker set. If brush and chisel are colored, then it's not part of the main marker set. If all 3 are colored, then it doesn't matter which one I look in, I'll find it. So that's why you'll notice all of the orange extendeds, fine is actually not colored in. And that's because I've only got them in the brush and chisel versions. With the pattern, I decided to go with the orange color theme. I would like to preface this by saying that I am an incredibly creative individual. I've been doing professional art commissions for 5+ years now. Not in markers per se, but digitally. Orange is orange. Yep, didn't get much deeper than that. I can't explain that beyond. Yeah, I'm just like, what's orange? Oranges are orange? Oh, cool, let's draw some oranges. And that was the end of that thought process. So I drew some oranges. And I gotta admit, I'm quite happy with how the oranges came out. For those curious as well, the white detailing, you'll notice. Now, I did my best to organically have the white line separating everything just for that nice, lineless effect, while still making it clear what everything is. But obviously, markers bleed, and it isn't easy to always accurately get to that white lining when, your sketch isn't that detailed. So I actually use the Signo Broad Uniball gel pen. I think you can get these for like $3-4-ish bucks from like your local Office Works or Office Shop. Straight up, swear by them. They're absolutely fantastic. I think I cannot for the life of you tell me where I found the information about this pen because it was so long ago that I was young. I'm not that old, but still. All of the specific white dealing, like the little speckles and the oranges and stuff you'll see further on, that's the gel pen. Now for this next page, we're moving more into the pink, so we're starting to bleed into the pink area. Ohuhu's interesting in the way they categorize stuff. Like, I think some of the categories you'll see might just come from the fact that maybe they were just part of the original lineup, or they changed their color names or systems, so they couldn't, there's no point changing the old pens. I don't know what the logic behind it, but for some reason we have a pink, we have a red pink. Got a few different versions that kind of feel like they would make more sense in the same category, and red pink's definitely one of those. But hey, just an excuse to make more pretties. Now, on this page, I have decided for the standard pink category to go for a nice Sakura style design. So, I looked up some pictures of Sakuras, and I did a basic thing, and I'm quite happy with how they came out. Like, I kind of wanted to just go for a nice, like, soft and flowy vibe, nice and comfy, and I was inspired to do Sakura because one of the pinks is called Sakura Pink, and my brain went, oh, Sakuras are pink, aren't they? And then that was the end of that thought process. And then, of course, into the next category for the red pink, I decided to go with like a stylistic rose kind of look. Now, I will be honest, I fucked up the background and did my absolute best to salvage it. Essentially, I was trying to do like, the roses disappearing into the dark kind of vibe, and instead it just turned into a big blob, and I don't like big blob, so I went over it with my white gel pen, trying my absolute best to kind of fade it out to bring the roses back to the foreground. And, for an oh dear God save me, why? It came out alright. I'd like to hope it looks deliberate, because then that way I look like a genius art wizard and not like an art tool. But yeah, so that was the mindset behind these pages here. And of course, on each of the pages, you will notice that I do have a little bit of extra space kind of added in, like here and here. I do have a little bit of extra space just in case Ohuhu comes out with any more colors in the future, and I, like a magpie, flock to the shiny new art supplies. What do you think of when you see the color red? Now, red's one of those colors where there are a lot of things you could go with. It's a very, very versatile color. What do you think of when you see the color red? You could go macabre, blood and gore and violence and blur. You could go modern, brands, Coca-Cola, Om. You could go cars and vehicles and machinery and props, lights and hair and stuff, and the Biscoff jar specifically. But I wanted to stay at least moderately nature-themed, so my mindset was, I've already done a fruit. Oh, fruits can be red. I'm gonna do cherry, because cherries are red. Yeah, quite literally, because I did orange a couple of pages ago, I wanted to keep it moderately cohesive, so I decided to go with a cherry pattern on this one. I was juggling between cherries and apples, and I ended up deciding to go with cherries just because it's a bit more visually distinct. Honestly, I'm quite happy with how the cherries came out. Now, the cherries are one of the ones which I blended within an inch of its life. I beat that up with so many layers. I am impressed this paper not only survived, it didn't flinch. I'm like, I've got at least like 7 to 10 layers on this board. Like this, I had so many layers that it was still juicy as I was blending it, which was what I wanted, because I wanted it to be juicy because the blend would go better. And the paper was like, alright. As an artist, I am very, very, very pleased. But yeah, so that was the mindset behind it. Now, as you can see, red, there are a lot of red tones in the Ohuhu package, which is good because red's a really important color, and it is in most of everything. Red is an incredibly important color. It's an undertone. It plays a role in a lot of different things. Now, as you can see from flipping this page over, look at that bleed through on the cherries. Like, yes, these are alcohol markers. I will be completely upfront in saying you could have the best paper in the world and alcohol markers will go nothing stops me. I have official Ohuhu marker pad, like it is designed specifically for marker use, and that shit bleeds like crazy. That is why whenever you get Ohuhu markers, they will always include a little floppy plasticky thing, and the entire point of the floppy plasticky thing is quite literally to put it between your pages to prevent bleed through. And it works. I like my floppy plasticky thing, and it comes with every single one. They only include A5 ones. I think if you want the bigger floppy plasticky thing, you've got to specifically get the notebooks with the correct size. Now, on for the red continued section. As you've seen in previous pages now, and as you will see in pages going forward, repeating the same pattern on a new page is what we extra bastards like to call boring. I didn't want to draw any more cherries. I've already done cherries. So then I was like, well, now that I've done cherries, what can I do now? And I will admit, the red continued section is what I like to call a happy accident, or more accurately, a lucky brain fart. I had no idea what to do for the red continued section. So I decided, well, when in doubt, fall on the default. And so far, the default of every section that my brain has gone absolutely liquefied for has been flowers. Flowers come in lots of colours, right? And so I drew some flowers. I will be honest, I just looked up pink flower, and that one showed up, and I went, perfect, pink flower it is. And then I drew pink flower, and I included like some little like puffs and little vine things around to give it a really patterny feel, just to really make it more cohesive, so it's not just like 3.5 pink flowers just flat on a white page, because that would be what we call boring. And then, of course, we move on to the next section. Now, you'll notice, despite the fact that there are a lot of purples in this set, there are not a lot of purples in the purple section. In fact, there are so few purples, there are only one column. And the reason for that is I'm pretty sure Ohuhu abandoned the purple section. This is a game theory, this is not a fact, but considering the next page is almost entirely violet, I think they changed their mind on what to call the purple, but they didn't want to change what they'd already called purple. So that gave me a lot more space than usual to play with in our little purple section. And what do you think of when you think of the color purple? Because I can tell you what I think of when I think of the color purple. My birthstone. I think of amethyst. I like amethyst, it's nice. So I looked up amethyst, and then I saw it, and I went, challenge accepted. And so I decided to draw some pretty rocks. And I will admit, I'm actually really happy with how the rocks came out. I think the only thing that I was miffed about is the fact that I drew the purple border in such a dark color that it still showed through the amethyst, whereas in all the other ones I was able to hide the border I pre-drew. But considering, you know, gems, I decided to go down the happy accident route of, well, gems do refract light, and it would not be hard to believe that if there was, say, a light source behind an amethyst, if it wasn't a very thick amethyst, then yeah, you could probably see at least a little bit of what's behind it. And so that is the logic that I am telling myself so that I can sleep at night. I'm quite happy with it, and I thought it came out looking really cool. And the most important part is that the gems look shiny, and that was all I cared about, because I like shiny things. That's why I'm addicted to Archer and Olive. Violet. The cool man's purple. If purple is for plebs, violet is for the fancy. But yeah, so this is the violet section. As you can see, it kind of goes everywhere between a pinkish purple to a bluish purple, or as my mum liked to call growing up, blurple. But yeah, so I decided to go with a lavender theme for the violet section. I thought it would be a nice juxtaposition. It goes with the plant nature theme that I've been doing throughout, and of course, I just think it looked good. And the reason I went with lavender is because one of the colors is called lavender, and I was like, oh yeah, lavender's a purple. And then that's how we got here. Yeah, honestly, I'm quite happy with how the lavender came out. You know, just a little bit of handy art advice for those who have survived this long in the video. You've earned it, congratulations. Whenever you're drawing a landscape or a perspective piece, specifically this works more in backgrounds or large landscape kind of deals, you want the further away from you to be lighter. Actually look into the horizon, or like an area where you can actually see quite far in the background. Like, I'm not talking like, say, like you're looking out a window and your background is 4 cars at an apartment building. No, you want to go somewhere with like a good chunk of distance. So like, I don't know, stare down a highway or something, whatever's nearby. Look out and look far away into the horizon. Like, you want to look as far away as you can. You want an unobstructed view, and you will notice the closer to the horizon, the lighter it is. More accurately, the lighter blue it is. And the reason for that is just the atmosphere, I guess. But essentially what that translates to into drawing art is the further away something is, draw it in a lighter color, because you will notice if you draw it in a lighter color, it will give that perspective feeling, which is why when you look at mine, you get the vibe that some of them are in fact further away, because I have deliberately drawn them in a lighter color than the ones in the foreground. It also helps the foreground pop as well. Also, the further away they are, the less detail you want to put in them. And the reason for that, beyond keeping your own sanity, is eyeballs aren't that good. Then, after violet, we enter my favorite section, because my favorite color is blue. And so we began our journey onto drawing the blue ones. Now, I decided to, expand my nature theme a little further in blue, and decided to try something a little bit new. And so I decided, let's draw some butterflies. How hard could that be? Turns out, when you are drawing butterflies without line art, it is a very, very, very thin tightrope you are walking on between, oh, that's a nice butterfly, and ah, shit, but I will admit, I think I came out on the side of, oh, it's a nice butterfly. No, I really enjoyed drawing the butterfly. I basically just looked up, like, blue butterfly. I cannot tell you for the life of me the name of the butterfly that I based it on, but the only difference between my butterflies and its butterflies is the dark blue sections, I believe, were actually just black on the real butterfly, but the rest was blue. And I really enjoyed drawing the butterflies. Like, that was a really fun, cathartic one for me to draw. This was the beginning of the blue section, and I will admit, the violet blue page is one of the pages I am happiest with out of this swatch palette. Mostly because I like purple and blue, and I did not cover the art. What do you think of when you see the color blue? What do you draw in the theme of plants and fruit that's blue? I decided to draw a bird. Blue's my favorite color, and as such, the one that I absolutely went the hardest on. Now, the bird was probably out of all of these, it is definitely the one that I the most am happy about. And the reason for that is, you like my bird, but also the white section of the bird. Now, before getting this obnoxiously fancy sketchbook, I used cheap shit. And when I was drawing the bird, I was deliberately limiting myself only to the color palette on the page. I would sometimes make exceptions if it was a case like the blue continued where it bled over to the previous page, but the vast majority of it had to be the colors presented directly next to it. In comes the bird. The bird has a white bit on its belly, which would be fine, except this is a lineless piece. I'm not doing line art. White is the line art, so I can't just leave it as a big white gap, because then the bird will look gutted. I needed shading. Before this point, whenever I used the colorless blender, I wanted to do something called beat my head against a wall, because it never worked. It always drove me insane. I never understood why the hell it was always included, because for a colorless blender, it never blended shit. Turns out that was just a skill issue, or a paper issue. So, here I am, faced with a dilemma. I do not have an extremely light blue. I need shading on a white underbelly. I have a colorless blender and a relatively light blue. Worst thing that could happen is I'd fuck it up, and that would be the end of the video. Or more accurately, I would just cover it in so much gel pen, just like that rose page. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, it's all completely done, moving on. I put down the blue for the shading. I got out the colorless blender, and it looks like magic! What the fuck? It was like an epiphany struck me out of nowhere, and I saw the light. The colorless blender works! This was what it was supposed to do all along? You mean to tell me that this is actually a useful tool? Let's just say me and the colourless blender made up for our previous disagreements and decided to get along from this point forward. And I went from hating the fact that I've got probably 5 or 6 colourless blenders because they include it in every single pack they sell. And all of a sudden I was like, I'm so happy I've got so many spare colourless blenders because I have just discovered a tool for wizards. And I am the magician now. Which is an extremely dramatic way of going. I figured out how to do the shading on the bird. But yeah, I also use the colourless blender as well to help blur out the background a little bit, give it a little bit of a like a distance, like a focal point issue, and it really helps shade the tree as well. And I was really happy with how the bird came out. Yes, so after blue, we have what I have affectionately decided to call pea blue. The reason that pea blue gets that incredibly flattering name is because out of all of these, it was the only category where I could not figure out why the hell it's called what it's called. Because PB is the letter code which was on these next group of markers. But the only solution I could think of was either A, purple blue, or B, Prussian blue. But that's bullshit, because that is a very specific shade of blue. So I drew a blank. I refused to put in purple blue because it was clearly wrong, but I couldn't put blue green because the category right after is quite literally BG blue green, so it was very, very clearly not that. I didn't want to put turquoise or aqua. These are specific shades of blue and not all of them fell into that category. And so I compromised. I accepted my fate. I did not know what the P stood for. Google did not know what the P stood for. Reddit did not seem to know what the P stood for, and as such, P Blue was born. And I decided to do those cute little flower puff plants on them because I thought it would look nice. Quite happy with how it turned out, actually. It's, it was surprisingly difficult, all things considered, but I actually was quite happy with how the little blue puff ports turned out. I initially started drawing them thinking, oh, I could just do dots and a thing, and then I realized, no, I'm doing detail, you idiot. Draw the petals. But I drew the petals good, and I'm quite happy with that. There's nothing quite like that artistic feeling going like, ah, I drew good. On to the next category of blue-green. Now, I believe this is definitely, yep, this is another one that bleeds over to the next page. Now, the theming of blue-green was, my thought process was extremely detailed and dedicated. It went through webs and weaves and webs and weaves, what to do, and I thought of the most genius, the most incomprehensibly genius option I could think of for the colour green, or blue-green specifically. You know what's green? Leaf. Yeah, that's right. Leaf is green. And then I drew leaf. KO. Yeah, I decided to go with a kind of like a leaves in the jungle kind of look. I think they're like banana tree leaves or something. I don't know. I looked up green leaf pattern. That was my Google search. I saw that leaf and I went, that's good leaf. I'm going to do that leaf. And you will notice on the next page, I kind of went through a very, very, very similar train of thought. So for the blue-green continued section, I continued down the deep dark road of leaf, and I went, well, I did holy leaf on the past page, so I will do hanging leaf on this one. And so I did a scuffy ivy-like pattern. It's definitely scuffy, you know, it wasn't perfect, but it came out looking alright. And you know what? It was a tiny section, and I needed some leaves to fill it, and I was happy with how it turned out. On to the green section. Now, I did 2 leaf patterns for blue-green, so I couldn't just go in to the next one and do leaf again. I'll have you know I have pride, thank you very much. 2 leaves is almost too many. So for this next section, since it was green and I could not do leaf, I decided to take my 5 head to the next level. You wanna know what else is green? Tree. Tree is full of leaf. Big brain. I decided to go with a tree pattern. I thought it would look good. And this one, I was aiming for like a foggy pine tree in the meadow kind of vibe, which is a really wanky way of saying me wanted to make tree look nice. And I'll be honest, having finished this one, like looking at it now, like I had difficulty while I was drawing. This was one of those pages that I layered within an inch of its life. If this paper was not as good as it was, this paper would have failed. You don't understand. I treated this paper horribly. I may as well have soaked this page in alcohol with how much I was layering. It was thick and juicy level of layering. That's how deep it was, because I was trying to get specific details and whenever you're trying to get a significantly darker color to blend into a significantly lighter one, you end up doing what they like to call in the business, beating it with a proverbial spoon until it works. Most paper can't handle that, but this paper can. And that's how I got this look. And I will admit, now that I'm finished, I'm really happy with it. I was going for this nice, valley perspective kind of look, but it's really pleasantly surprising that it worked. Like, yeah, I know, wow, something I intended to work, shush, but it's always nice when, like, you're drawing something and it comes out the way you actually intend it to. Like, that happened a fair bit in this piece, but there are a couple that were definitely more in the happy accident category than the woohoo, but this was definitely a woohoo. This was one that I was really happy with how it came out. I think it came out good, and I was chuffed. And I hope you also like my Valley of the Trees. As you can see with the bleed through, I was not kidding when I said I beat it with a spoon. I beat it so hard with a spoon you can basically see it through the other side. For the green continued section, since I put all of my creative juices into tree, I figured I needed to dial it back a little bit. I couldn't just go with leaf, already done leaf. Couldn't just go with tree, can't top the trees on green. What about fern? Ferns are cool. Ferns are technically just plant. They have heaps of little leaves, but it's not leaf specifically. It's not tree, it is fern. Happy compromise. Middleman. And so I decided to do a fern pattern, and I will tell you point blank, that was a stupid ass decision. Do you know how many leaves are on a fern? Too many leaves! Way too many leaves. Wait, why do ferns have the... Ferns are leaves made out of leaves. This was painful. But I got it done. Mama didn't raise no quitter. She raised a weeb, and weebs are nothing if not tenacious. Yeah, so I drew the fern, and I will tell you point blank, I will cry if I have to draw another fern. I hope that will be the last fern I will ever draw, but I have said that about so many different things in my life, and I've had to draw them again, so I'll probably have to draw a fern again at some point. But right now I am living in the Delulu is the Solulu kind of mindset, and I hope that is the last fern I will ever have to draw, because Jesus Christ. Green, yellow, yellow, green. For the green-yellow section, and I called it green-yellow despite not having much harmony at all because it's GY, not YG. With this one, I was on a high after tree, so I wanted to go with something a little more dramatic, and in each one, it's always been fading into a white background, so let's try it another way. How about fading into a dark background, say, like a lotus pond? So yeah, I decided to go with, frog pads and ponds. I thought that would be nice. I was genuinely tempted to do a frog pattern specifically, but I ended up going with, kind of a lotus pad, lotus flower kind of pattern, and I'm quite happy how it turned out. Like, I did have a little trouble with the flower right close to the proverbial camera, I'm not gonna lie. I had to beat that one a little with the stick, because it kept not looking like a lotus flower, and that was a crime punishable by death. But all the other ones came out nice, and eventually, after my proverbial spoon beating, it came out looking like a lotus flower, and I was victorious. I do wish that I'd managed to get some more of the lily pads to fade into the water a bit more. However, considering the colour palette that I had on hand, if I had used other colours it might have faded too much and just kind of backfired in the opposite way. Honestly, at this point it just looks like a pond with an absolute shitload of pond leaves. So, you know what, all's good. This will be a frog's paradise, and that makes me happy. I was quite happy with how it came out, and even for the background, a little bit of blending up here, that was good old Colourless Blender Chan coming to the rescue. But yeah, I'm quite happy with how this page came out. Earth. Brown. I don't particularly know why Ohuhu decided to split Earth and Brown. And yes, I thought E meant Earth because it's the only brown thing I can think of that's general enough that would fall under the category of E. It had to be Earth. But why Earth? Why not just Brown? Brown would make more sense. Again, maybe they just wanted to shorten up the letters, though with some of the lengths of these names, I mean, you get into the grey section, you can see they don't care that much about shortening the letters. But for Earth, I decided, since we are going down to our dirt, to our dirty roots, what's close to dirt? Mushy, mushrooms, toadstools, there's a million ways to say it, fungi, mushrooms, and who doesn't love some lovely brown cottagecore mushrooms? So I decided to go with a nice falling mushroom palette for this one, and I'll be honest, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. just some nice speckled brown mushrooms falling down the page. It's raining mushes, hallelujah, it's raining mushes, oh yeah. Mindset about that was just quite literally like, oh crap, I need a brown thing. Yeah, Earth is one of these color palettes where clearly the vast majority of these are intended to be in the skin tone category. Quite a lot of these colors did come from the skin tone pack. Though, like, as you can see, the vast majority of them in fact did not, and they also came in the main set. But you'll find these colors are used mostly in skin tones, hair colors, dirts, etc. Because like brown is a very human color, and so that's why this category really is as in depth that it is. Yeah, so that is why I did toadstools. The brown section, like the purple section, like a few other sections before it, is clearly a remnant Ohuhu markers past, because there were not many in it, and they could have very easily fallen into Earth without any problems. Though I do laugh how BR208 is black-brown. That's not even, that's pink. That is pink, bro, that is pink. It's not black-brown, that is pink. Yeah, so we've got 4 quote-unquote browns, and since I had such a limited color palette of browns, I had to think, what's brown, what's brown, what's brown? Brown and limited that's not literally just piles of dirt. Nuts. Not a nut for me. And yes, acorns, they nuts, yay or nay, but a squirrel would probably see them as a nut, because squirrels see them as very delicious. So I went with acorns. I thought it would suit the color palette, and it did. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. And I have never looked so hard at an acorn. I guess you could say this surely was one nutty spread. Ayo. Grey. Grey is a tone that we take for granted. You recognize when something is grey, but grey is almost never anyone's favorite color. With grey, I decided to do things a little bit differently. Whereas in every other category, I would separate them based on the letters categorization. So for example, WG and RG would be in completely separate boxes with completely separate designs. However, with grey, I decided to do things a little bit differently. And the reason I decided to do things a little bit differently is because at this point I had been working on this for a week and a half and I wanted my table back. So I decided to take a bit of a shortcut and split them into warm grey and cool grey. To my fellow artists out there, yes, I did stick the neutral greys into cool grey because I did not want to also do a neutral grey palette. There were like 5 of them. But neutral grey looks colder than it looks warmer, so cool grey it was in. For warm grey on the pattern on the side, I'll be honest, out of every pattern that I have done, this was the most, pattern in this entire swatch palette. Because I had no idea what the hell to do for warm grey. I was drawing a blank. I searched up grey pattern and I just get color splushes. Like, I did not have a clue what to do with warm grey. I was grasping at straws. And so, I was like, knit pattern. Yeah, oh, yep, that's jumpers. Give me jumpers. But I didn't want to draw jumpers, but I figured, oh, knit pattern. All right, I can do a knit pattern in the shape of a thing. Heart. Let's do knit hearts. That'll be cute. I can do a simple knit heart pattern. Let's do a knit pattern. All right. So I draw in a knit pattern in the shape of hearts, and as I'm drawing it, I am realizing it, because I'm drawing it quite small, that it is in fact not very clear and looks like garbage. Shit, I've already put the alcohol marker to paper. I am not doing this again. Fix this. Alright, I need to make it look good. Alright, we're sticking with knit hearts. Alright, so the 2-dimensional one looks like garbage. How about we, let's go in with the white marker. Let's go in with the white marker. So I took my gel pen and I went and I separated all the knit patterns. So it was super clear, the knit pattern going on, but it just didn't look good enough. It's missing something. So I went in with a darker grey and I outlined it, but I deliberately made sure that I was outlining it as if I was outlining the knit pattern and not just a generic heart. I figured, let's make it a little bit sketchy, make it a little bit messy, give it a bit more substance. And at this point, it was starting to come into form. It was starting to make sense. It was starting to look like garbage. And so I was like, all right, let's go down this road. Shadows. Let's add some shadows. So I added some shadows under the hearts. And at this point, I'm like, all right, okay, we're on the right track. It's actually starting to look decent. All right, so we've got some shadows. We've got a 3rd dimension. I know what to do. I got out my gray, and on top, I gave it shading. I gave it shape. And I will admit, it came out looking pretty cool. So now I have weird heart plushies made of knit as my warm grey pattern, and yeah, I'm happy with it. It somehow came out looking really good. It came out looking good. Like, that is the definition of trust the process. In cool grey, I looked up cool grey things, and I saw a picture of those dangerous little rock towers that people keep building everywhere. And yes, if you ever see one of those gravity-defying rock towers, knock it over. Probably gonna kill a fish otherwise. But you can't deny, aesthetically, they are very cool. So, for cool grey, my theme was cool gravity-defying rock tower thingy. And I will admit, courtesy of that colourless blender coming in clutch, darling, came out looking really cool. I'm quite happy. It got the fade in really nice, and I'm really happy it turned out. It's got grit, it's got rocks. It rocks. Yeah, I was quite happy with how this one turned out. And yeah, like, those gravity-defying stone towers are always pretty cool to look at. Last not least, cool grey continued. This page we had the rest of the cool greys, the green greys, the blue greys, a neutral grey. And since this was the last box, I was struggling to think of what to do. What else is grey? I've done rock towers, I've done weird hearts made of knit. What can I do? And then I remembered, in blue, I drew butterflies. Now, what are butterflies equally as cute but hated cousin? Moths, fluffy butterflies. And so I looked up pictures of white moths, and granted, the picture I found was warm grey, but at this point I did not care. I have been using monochromatic colour palettes this entire time around, and some of the things that I've drawn, you cannot tell me they are the colour that they are. Trees are not blue. So I decided to follow my rule by breaking a rule once more, and I drew in some moths. I'm happy with how they came out. Yeah, it's probably not the best moths a man could draw, but you know what they are. I'm quite happy with them. It's just a panel full of moths. And I did end up using the Cool Grey 05 and the Colourless Blender a fair bit, because of course the moths are quite light, but I didn't have a shade lighter than BG 050. And voila, that brings us to the end. And that's that. But yeah, so this project took me about a week and a half to do. I did not realise how much I would be... I did not realise what I would be getting into when I started this. In retrospect, I probably should have planned this out a bit better, but knowing me, I will not in future. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to drop a like and subscribe / etc, the usual. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I do hope you like my silly little videos over here, and more absolutely to come. I have plenty other art supplies hanging around, well in need of a swatching, so I can guarantee you that will not be the last swatch video on this channel. So if you like watching a man do some extra swatches, then this might be the place for you. But yeah, thank you guys so much. Have an amazing evening, morning, night / etc, and keep an eye out, because I have got some Bujo videos coming. 2025 is here, and a bitch has to plan. Bye bye.